So, in today's episode is the very first episode. I'm going to be recording both an audio and video of my podcast. I know it's been a long time coming, and honestly, I have been procrastinating, but hey, here I am finally doing it. Also, thank you, Mads, for the encouragement and literally just telling me to do it. So, I'm going to do it in a way that's easy for me, so it's not a lot of work, and then if I get inspired down the road, I can be more fancy with it. But for now, this episode, I was inspired by the last two Audible books that I was listening to, and they were both by, I believe, second generation Koreans. I don't know about the second book, but the first book that I heard was Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. And that book hit me on so many different levels. Specifically the part, well, if you don't know the story, I don't want to spoil it, but hey, spoiler alert. Um, just the parts where before her mom dies, all the stories and things and how she was relating to like not being able to speak Korean very well, her relationship with her mom, even just like the different foods that they would bond over. I related to that so much, and I was just like, holy crap, like, have we lived the same life? Because some of the things that she shared, I was like, those are the exact same things that I experienced in my life and that I can relate to. And then the other book that I read was I Want to Die, but I Want to Eat Tteokbokki. Author of that is Baek Se-hee. That one also was very interesting to me because it was like these dialogues that the author had with her psychiatrist are in this book. And me as a therapist, I was highly, highly paying attention to the psychiatrist's responses in this book. And of course, judging because I'm a true Virgo that way. I do judge, analyze, criticize everything, but don't let that scare you about me because most of the judging, analyzing is about myself. I know this. So that book was very interesting in different aspects as well, just to see how mental health is incorporated into a Korean person's life. And I'm really relating a lot and wanting to connect a lot to my Korean culture through my lens and through my experience. And of course, hearing other Korean diasporas or even just other stories of Koreans where we're being more vocal, we're more public, available, and having representations on the screen. And so for my inner child, this is very healing for my inner child because, like, as a kid, I had wished so much that there was a representation of someone like me that I could see, that I could relate to, that had the same sort of experiences. Because honestly, if I had seen a Korean woman of second generation that was a lesbian in my younger days, I think I would have figured out that I was a lesbian way sooner in my life. So to have these books available now to me of Korean authors, of people of second generation or of mixed race, still with the Korean culture in it, hearing their stories and just hearing how, no matter where we are in the world, that we all have kind of similar experiences and we can all really relate to each other. And the part that I wanted to share about, I think, was going to be more towards even like my mental health, even though I do consider myself a pretty mentally healthy person. But just especially with my emotional body, growing up in a Korean family, I was never really nurtured through with my emotional parts of me. I am a very sensitive person, and as a kid, I was pretty much in denial of that, or I had to shut that part of myself down because I was super sensitive. And also in what I learned, I wouldn't say this is only prevalent in Korean culture, but it highly is that you do not, show your dirty laundry. So you can't be overly emotional publicly. Otherwise, it's really frowned upon. But part of that is that so many Koreans then, aka myself, are emotionally immature or have not been nurtured that way, and that develops a trauma within us. And so for me, my trauma, little t trauma, if you're big into psychology and stuff like that, little t trauma, was that because I was emotionally unnurtured, I was stunted in many ways and had to shut many parts of myself off that essentially were the parts of me that were the strongest. You know, the emotional body in me is really sensitive to the point where I can definitely pick up on other people's emotions and what they're feeling. And sometimes it's to a detriment to myself, because just hanging out with a person, I can find that their emotions will linger in my body and I'll start feeling that way. But luckily, with my awarenesses and building on my own self-awareness, which I always say over and over again, awareness is key, especially self-awareness. For me, if I wasn't be able to distinguish my energy versus somebody else's energy entering my field, I would have just been thinking that I'm feeling this way and not known that it was somebody else's energy that I just need to clear from my body. But I have that awareness now, and I've only been able to really tap into that and develop that awareness first by really embracing the emotional sensitivity that I have. And I don't want to even say being emotionally sensitive is a detriment or something to be looked down upon. I think it's actually one of my greatest strengths. We are social beings. One of the greatest things about being a human, in my perspective, is that we have this ability to feel a wide range of emotions, from joy, bliss, right down to shame. And there are benefits to both sides of the spectrum, especially benefits to experience all the spectrums of emotions. It's what I believe gives my life color. It gives my life saturation, tones, intensity, aliveness, but also it can be the detriment of, like, it could make my life miserable. It could cause me to downward spiral or take away from my life. This is what I see, like how powerful emotions can be. And when I hear of other kids or even other people where they weren't emotionally nurtured, my heart really just sinks for them, because number one, I experienced the same thing. But also, number two, now that I've kind of gone through the tunnel and I'm on the other side of things, I can really see how really embracing my sensitivity or my awareness or my emotional body has been this gateway to experience and tap into so many other things other than this physical reality of life that we call here on earth and being a human being. There's so much more to us, but I wasn't able to access that without addressing my emotional body. And it was through my emotional body where I feel my emotions are like my compass in life. It leads me to my true north. Based on how I feel about something, my response to something, I know if this is the way that I should go or if I should go the other way. And that goes the same with people as well. After spending time with them, I really assess how I feel afterwards and see if this is a consistent thing with this person. If it is, I have to assess, like, okay, maybe this is a person that I don't spend too much time with at one sitting because my energy gets drained by them. Or vice versa. I have other people where I know I can spend days and days with them and be totally fine. I think I got off track there, but I wanted to go back to, just the experience of being a Korean diaspora. So I was born and raised here in Canada, and also being Canadian and being exposed to so much of like American culture through TV. I have this other thing too. It's where I feel like being Canadian sometimes is lesser than being American, because Americans have access to so many different things that Canadians don't. And that's also been a consistent thing, even still to this day, that I experience. But just being a Korean diaspora in Canada, First of all, me growing up in Canada, I experienced a lot of racism and I internalized a lot of it. And I have a podcast about that in the prior episodes if you want to listen to that. But through my experience, in the beginning, I didn't want anything to do with being Korean. I didn't even want people to know that I was Korean, but because of the way that I look, people can tell that I'm not from here, which even just saying that, like, I am from here because I was born here, but in a sense, nobody is from here in this land. Only the indigenous people are of this land. But that's a whole nother topic. We can get to there if you want, but I want to stick to my experience in being a Korean diaspora. And so growing up, I experienced a lot of racism. I didn't want to be Korean. I wanted to be white. I, in fact, saw myself as white until finally, I remember this one day, I had a bunch of friends over at my house and we ended up all in the bathroom somehow. And just looking in the mirror and seeing how my skin color or just the way that I looked was so different from all of my white friends. I hated that, like, because I wanted to be white. But in wanting to be white, I denied a lot of things about my Korean culture, or I was ashamed about things about my Korean culture, like the food, how kimchi, it can be pretty stinky sometimes. And so I didn't even like kimchi growing up as a kid, honestly. And I don't think it was because necessarily just of the smell, but different reasons. And now to this day, though, I love kimchi, even make it myself. But as a kid, I didn't like kimchi, especially the smell of it. It stank everything up. That's what I thought. And going to school, if I had to pack a lunch, which was on a rare occasion, which I am actually grateful for, because I think if I had to eat lunch at school, the amount of racism would have been a lot more because of the foods that I would bring to school. But there were times when, say, on a field trip or something, I had to bring a lunch, and if my mom did not pack me a sandwich, if it were something of the ethnic variety, I would get embarrassed about it. I wouldn't eat it. I'd probably throw it in the garbage and look for some white food to eat just to fit in. But having been born into this kind of conditioning of just wanting to fit in, I denied several parts about myself. And one of them that I'm even still struggling with today, but really just embracing how imperfect I am about it and how I'm still just a baby in it, is, like, for example, speaking Korean. I really wish to be able to speak 한국말, like 한국말 하고 싶어. At least I think I said that right. Right? Maybe I didn't. But like, I really wish to be able to speak Korean fluently, but my accent is pretty terrible right now. But I know I'm just beginning. But like, me being Korean, I do have a lot of shame that I can't even speak the language. But that came from other people. Like, I've had several Korean ajishis come to me, Korean men. That's what ajashi is. I've had several Korean ajishis just like kind of shame me, like, how come you can't speak Korean? Like, you're Korean, aren't you? Right? And it got to the point where as a kid, sometimes I wouldn't even say that I was Korean. I'd say I'm Chinese, because a lot of people actually assumed that I was Chinese. Even some Koreans would think that I was Chinese, that I look Chinese. I've grown with that exposure, that oftentimes people think that I'm Chinese. But even back as a kid, though, like, nobody had even heard of Korean. So if they ask what my ethnicity is, they'd, of course, say Chinese first, or then they'd say, oh, then you got to be Japanese. But if I say no to that, they'd be like, well, then what the fuck are you? Like, imagine being a kid and being exposed to that kind of idea, a way of thinking, several times, to the point where I take it on to myself, and I'm like, what the fuck am I if I'm not Chinese or Japanese? I mean, I know I'm Korean, but like, nobody knows what a Korean is. Imagine growing up with that and how it affected you. But for me, I have to, like, how did it affect me? Well, my sense of belonging, it's kind of all over the place. I'm always wanting to belong somewhere, but at the same time, if I find a place where I do belong, I look for the one thing that makes me stand out, and that's my justification of like, see, I don't belong here either. And I still do that to this day. And one parts of where I don't belong is, okay, here in Canada, I am a ethnic minority, obviously, right? So I don't fit in with the majority. I look different than from the majority of people. That's just been my experience. That's all that I know, and so it's comfortable for me. But the last couple times when I went to visit Korea, I had a huge culture shock where I looked like everyone else. At least I thought I did. Okay, so I remember even just sitting on the bus in Korea thinking, wow, like I look like everybody else. To experience that was just so foreign to me. But yet, as days went on, or even if I tried to, the second I opened my mouth, or even just like the way that I dressed or the way that I smelled, people from Korea, they know that you're not from Korea. And then they would ask me, like, where are you from? You're not from Korea. Are you Korean? Right? They'd question that. And so experiencing that in my motherland, my brain was like, well, okay, you thought in Canada you didn't belong there because you were a minority, but now being here in Korea, you look like everyone else, but you don't belong here either. They know you aren't from here. So for me, I'm just like, whoa, where the hell do I belong then? I don't belong anywhere. And I kind of need to come to that conclusion, for now at least, that I don't belong anywhere. But because of that, I can kind of belong anywhere and be comfortable with it, because that's just what I'm used to. I'm used to always sticking out in some way or being different than everyone else. And that's kind of my comfort zone, or the place that I just know. And so because of that, yeah, I can actually go anywhere and feel like I belong, but my sense of belonging is of not belonging anywhere. I'm just laughing at myself and how I can make things so complex, but at the same time, like, if I just make things so simple, like, I'm a human being just like everyone else. But the human experience is so different based on what kind of body you come into, right? What kind of life experiences you have. Like another second generation Korean or a Korean diaspora could have a totally different experience than me. But what I really want to, I guess, share is that your life experience is valid to you. And I do know that sometimes internally, if we're feeling a certain way, but externally it's not expressed. So for example, if I was feeling like majorly depressed right now, but you can't see it externally through my expression, I'm good at hiding it. Well, sometimes we will develop this thing where our stories will be over dramatized for it to match how we feel internally, so that therefore people externally can understand where we're at. And I find that people kind of do that naturally, not intentionally. They subconsciously do that because it's a way for us to express where we are and to find a sense of connection. And so I know for me that I probably, I'm not going to say probably, I do sometimes over dramatize situations that I'm in, so that people can understand how I feel internally, when in reality, my situation might not be as harsh or urgent as I expressed it, but inside I feel that way. And so I want people to be able to see and connect with me in that part, because my sense of wanting to connect with others, to feel seen, to be in relation with other people, it's a huge part of that is for them to understand or to communicate with me how they are feeling emotionally, and vice versa, for me to be seen and understood of how I feel emotionally in this moment, that is what gives me a huge sense of like qualitative connection with others. And so sometimes through my life experience, I may over dramatize something so that that person can understand where I am feeling internally. But I would not have been able to even be aware that I was doing this had I not really nurture my own emotional body, and because my parents couldn't give me that as a child. I mean, your parents raise you the best with what they know, and I know my parents did that, but emotionally they are still like teenagers, and I had to like reparent myself and letting my inner child know that it's okay to feel things the way that you do, to feel them as deeply as you do, and that it's nothing to be ashamed of, and that it's a part of you that you should actually really value, because it is my gateway to connect to so many different things, to my creativity, to my sense of problem solving, to my sense of relating to others is through my emotions. And being a Korean diaspora where, emotions aren't necessarily seen as a value asset, me having to suppress it was like me dying inside every day, like dying of 1,000 tiny little stab wounds because I couldn't express myself emotionally. And so now as an adult and doing things like this for my inner child of like, see, you are out there. There's a person exactly like you that you can see on screen now and that you can relate to. You can even reach out to them and have a conversation with them. They're a real person. That to do that for myself, for my inner child, it's really healing for me. And this is part of me reparenting myself, that I'm okay for exactly how I turned out. And if there's parts of me that I want to change, then I can do that, or just learn to embrace all the different parts of me. And the more that I embrace all of me, especially internally, the more empowered that I feel, the more I can detach from taking things so personally, like comments that people give to me, even if it comes from my family. If it's something that I don't agree with and they think it's, say, something negative that I possess, well, I essentially won't give a shit, because all that really matters is how you think about yourself. And I really had to learn that the hard way, because I know this in Korean culture. I am going to say this specifically to Korean culture because it is very relevant there, that Koreans place a lot of value emphasis on looks and status. And so I know I have a trip planned to Korea the end of the summer, and it'll be my first time going back in 25 years, and my first time also going back as a queer person. Um, I know I'm going to face a lot of judgment there the second I land there, because one, I'll probably be very tanned by the time I get there because I love the sun, and just the way that I dressed. I have tattoos like on all the left side of my body, and I'm not as skinny as the typical Korean girl, and I don't have those Korean beauty standards at all, except for having Sankopul, which, I got naturally. Anyways, I do not match the Korean standard of beauty for a female. And I know I'm going to stick out a lot because of that and be judged a lot by people there. And I just have to be okay with it. I know it's going to happen. For me to be able to say I don't give a fuck all the time, I don't know if I'll have that capacity when I get there, but it's just something I know I'm going to have to face, and I'm actually really not looking forward to that part of the trip. But connecting to the land of Korea, to my motherland, and connecting to the culture is really important to me, even if I don't belong there. For myself to know where I came from, to know what my culture practices, it's a huge part in me, for me to embrace all that I am. And wow, I find myself being a little bit emotional right now over just expressing this, and didn't expect it, but like the Korean side of me, I've denied for most of my life. But for me to come kind of full circle in wanting to embrace more of my Koreanness and to understand that I'm as Korean as I need to be, that there isn't a certain standard for you to be Korean. I am Korean. But my life experience is different than, say, a Korean born in Korea. And I would also like to say that's been one of my greatest strengths, is that I've been able to blend two different cultures that I grew up in and to make it my own. And I have an understanding of two different cultures as well. Like, do Koreans in Korea know that? No, they don't. They don't have that experience. They can never comprehend what us Korean diaspora go through. And so this is just me saying, like, to all you other Korean diasporas out there, especially to you queer ones, I hope you really embrace how unique that you are, and you embrace everything that you are, the nationality that you are part of, the ethnicity that you are Korean, and that you take all of that and you see that as all of you, and that you belong. What do I even say about belonging? Because me not belonging anywhere is actually part of my sense of freedom, that I can, because I don't belong anywhere, I don't have to conform to any standards or expectations. But of course I still get caught in it, because like I just said, that story, like when I go back to Korea, I'm going to be highly judged by my appearance. But in essence, like if I just remind myself, well, I'm not a Korean that was born in Korea, so of course I don't meet those standards. I don't even know what all of them are. But I actually can see a perspective right now where when I go to Korea, because I am so different and unique, and in a way, like, just being authentically myself, that people will be drawn to that, drawn to just realness, that I'm not trying to hide who I am. I actually want to embrace all that I am. And even going to Korea, if I can't speak perfect Korean, well, hey, there's lots of foreigners that go to Korea that can't speak a lick of Korean. So why do I have to place so much high expectations for myself just because I have this ethnicity of being Korean? But I was born in Canada, so I'm a Canadian Korean, and we have our own culture, we have our own language, we have our own ways of embracing our foods that we like. And I love that I can actually give my family and my cousins a different perspective in life from my lived experiences. I felt like I'd talked like a mile a minute, that this whole 28 some minutes, but also very impressed that I was able to do it all in just one take. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions that you want to ask me, or if you are a Korean diaspora or second generation yourself, and you'd love to connect just through the same similar experiences we went through, or if you want to feel a sense of connection to people like us, I'd highly recommend to read the books that I mentioned earlier, Crying in H Mart or I Want to Die But Also Want to Eat Tteokbokki. Those books really connected to my heart and really validated my experience in life, and I'm sure it could do the same for you. So again, if you do want to reach out, I'm always open to connections, especially to other Korean diaspora women, queer women especially, because I just find when I have more people that are kind of like me, it's very comforting, and my inner child really loves it. And catering to my inner child, giving her what she needs, is always my priority. So thanks for listening and watching, and I hope you find that sense of connection to yourself and your sense of belonging in the way that you feel it.